Hello, hello, welcome. Sunday, March 26th. And here I am in California. Welcome to all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're from. I'm excited to be here. Who's ready and waiting? Katie, yeah. I saw you. Some of you were waiting. Welcome. Yeah, and in Europe, they're changing their clocks, or their clocks changed already. And so it might be a little off time for people coming from Europe. So you can always watch the replay. It's here. Hey, Robin. Welcome, sisters. I'm excited to be here. So this is the last YouTube Live, as you've received some of the messages in email. And if you're not on my email list, you can go to evolvingsisters.com and join the membership, or just get the free PDF, The Moon in You, Embodying Feminine Leadership Through the Cycles of the Moon. I love that PDF. It's a guidebook for the moon cycles. And so we're going to move this talk to the membership, and it will stay at the same time, but it'll be inside the membership portal on Zoom. And then we'll go right into our sisterhood session after that. And then we'll just condense the time that we are together. Probably it's going to be about 75 minutes. And this way it's been 1 hour each time. So it's a little more efficient. It's going behind in the membership. I hope to see some of you and or all of you there from all around the world. And then I'll keep dropping videos on YouTube, but they just won't be live streamed. So stay connected to this channel, stay connected to us somehow through the Evolving Sisters Network, or in whatever way you'd like to stay connected. All right, beauties, let's jump into what is going on the big picture. And then we're going to jump into Gene Key 17. So if you have Gene Key 17 in your hologenetic profile, drop me a note here. Let me know where it is in your hologenetic profile. Now, just to remember that we all have each of the 64 codes, each of the gene keys. Every one of us has all of them. There are just sequences that highlight something that came through as a transmission in Richard Rudd, who transmitted the gene keys. So 17 today, if your birthday is yesterday through next week, you have Gene Key 17 as your life work. And so that means you should pay a lot of attention to this, because the chances are you've been working with this already, and it'll make a lot of sense to you, and it'll illuminate a lot of things, because this is where your conscious sun is. So it's really reflective of your brand, of who you are, and the potential of your template. I love to look at life work in that way. It's the potential of your template. It's your karma, but it's the thing that you're here to transcend. Yeah, Myrna's here, and Myrna's Gene Key 17. Her birthday's next week. And also, like Myrna, if your birthday is on the 28th, you also are a 8 of clubs in the esoteric tradition of the deck of cards. And that's a very mind, it's the power of the mind. And so Myrna's got like double here. So I love that you're tuning in, and that you're going to get the transmission, and probably have been getting the transmission of how does your template, your particular way that you incarnated in flesh, in the mental structures that you have, in the conditioning that you have. We each have a template, and consciousness shines through the template, which is really the end of competition. It's the end of comparison, if you think about it in that way, because consciousness is choosing the form of you with all of your experiences and all of your uniqueness and particularities. You know, it's like we're not all constructed the same, so that the light can shine through each of us in a different way. And isn't that beautiful? It's like a symphony. You wouldn't want just one note or one instrument. And so that tendency to compare and judge is the shadow frequency of Gene Key 17. And we're going to dive into that. Ah, Suzanne's here. 17's in her IQ. Awesome. Christina, welcome. All right. Is this included in 17? I don't know what that means. 24.3. That might be your, is that your life work? We'll have to dive into that at another time. But welcome, everyone. This is for everyone. This is not just if your birthday is happening. This is for everyone. Because we all deal with these gene keys in some way or another. It's just that the activation sequence, if it happens to be your birthday, will highlight that there's a particular role that you might play with respect to these gene keys. If it's in your evolution, if it's in, like Suzanne said, your IQ, it's going to play different roles for you. So let's presence the big picture. The big picture is that we have just crossed into a new cycle. I mean, holy chills on that. And so we get to create a context that's powerful for ourselves because we're going to see a lot of change. And I was listening to some astrologers talk about this kind of change. And, you know, it's daunting for the mind. Right? And we're going to deal with the mind in this Gene Key 17. This is the mind. And the mind comes up with lots of patches and hacks because it feels insecure. And so one of its hacks is opinions, right? Judgments, sifting and sorting, so that it can know things so that it doesn't feel uncertain or, what is that? Unsafe. So we just notice that. And there's a lot of upheaval coming. You know, Pam Gregory was talking about the French Revolution and how it was like 12 years into Pluto crossing over into Aquarius. And so, you know, this is a long transit. There's decades involved. And these decades, we really need to surrender to the movement of evolution while at the same time co-creating it. We are not victims. It is both and this is Gene Key 17. I get chills when I'm saying this because Gene Key 17, like the question is everything predestined or is there free will? And Gene Key 17 says it's both. It's both a pattern, meaning math, meaning you can know it. And that's what 17 people are very awesome pattern recognizers. And it's also co-created. And we're going to enter that world because inside of that linear mind that sees the pattern is also the freedom from the pattern to see the bigger pattern, freedom from the matrix, I should say. Freedom from the matrix to see the bigger pattern. And when you see the bigger pattern, you're not seeing with your naked eye, you're seeing with your third eye. And that's where we're going. So there's never been a more important time to see with your third eye than right now. In your lifetime, right now. So if you don't have a spiritual practice, which I know most of you do, if you don't have a spiritual practice, it's really good to get one. Find something that delivers you to your way in, delivers you to God. What's your way in? And Gene Key 17 will talk about that as well. Because what's coming is massive shifts and changes, and we have a say. We want to have a say, right? We're not victims of this whole thing. So when the French Revolution happened, there were people starving. And this is exactly, except for a few more intense things happening now, it was exactly what was happening during the French Revolution. A square to the nodes. So this Pluto's square to the future. So that just hits like, and things break up and break down. So what happened was in the French Revolution, people were starving and they finally took back their power. And when they took back their power, they were angry and they killed people. And from there was basically a new constitution. Let's just say like a document about humanity and who humanity is and what inalienable rights humanity has. And that came from France. And then all the constitutions of Europe were like based on this. So you can see that if you have the fortitude, if you have the far sightedness, this is Gene Key 17, then you'll be able to see in the middle of the shit show, you're going to see what's really happening. And it's legit. And I'm going to show you how what you see is legit. I'm going to expand your world today with Gene Key 17. So listen with new eyes. Listen with new ears. See with new eyes. Listen softly, like engage your peripheral vision, engage your peripheral hearing. So that we can go into this space and you can know something for yourself and validate this way of knowing that's beyond linearity. So Gene Key 17 starts off with the shadow of opinions. And this is where it's not just the opinion, it's where we defend our opinions. It's where we will fight to the death for our point of view. Now, if you're listening to this, chances are, you have done enough personal growth work where that's just not something that you're willing to fight for your opinions to the death. You don't need to defend them so much. And it's also a trap for spiritual people because oftentimes, and I don't know about you, but the last couple of years, there was a lot of polarization and a lot of opinions. And in my family took a very clear stand and had an opinion on something. And a lot of families, a lot of friendships broke up because of the polarity that happened in the polarization that happened over the last 3 years. And so we can see the power of opinions when we are willing to defend them to the end. Now, Gene Key 17 says there's nothing wrong with opinions. It's just that when you're farsighted, when you step into the gift frequency, you see that all opinions are held lightly. It's kind of like what the Buddhists say of don't know mind. At the end of the day, you don't know. And the only reason why you're pretending you do know is because you want to feel safe and you want to feel certain. And so one of the graciousness that we can extend to other people, especially people caught in the shadow matrix of wanting to feel safe through their opinions, is compassion. Because haven't we been there? Don't we understand that? And isn't that, for a mind-dominated culture, isn't that a logical thing to do? Of course it is. Because there's no rootedness anywhere else. There is no other place of truth. And so the mind reigns supreme. And when the mind reigns supreme, it becomes dogmatic. It becomes judgmental. It becomes a know-it-all. And that's the shadow frequency of 17. So we as spiritual awakened people don't need to play in the polarity. We can simply exercise loving kindness. And that's like such an, can be a tall order when we're talking about our families and we're at the dinner table over Thanksgiving or the holidays or whatever holiday you have, and somebody starts spouting off their opinion. And so that's one of the ninja things that we get to cultivate as awakened people, of how do we respond to that? And I want to talk about that. And then I want to jump into like what's way more interesting material. And I'll get to the comments over here. Oh, France is revolting now. Exactly. Whoa, you can't even make this stuff up. That is so true. France is even revolting now. Wow. Yeah. And so in the 1780s, what was happening in the United States as well. So here we are, the spiral evolution. Not that history is repeating itself, because I don't really believe that. That to me is a very like dystopian or nihilistic way of looking at it, but it's certainly a spiral, and we're revisiting patterns, we're revisiting information and material with our new conscious awareness. And then as spiritually awakened people, we're asking ourselves, so what do you want to do about it? What do you want to create? And so one of the things when we come up against these judgments is not to fight it. You cannot convince anyone. So if there's still fight in you about convincing people, and this happens especially when you're new on the path. Remember the day that you discovered personal growth and spirituality, or just like you want to convert everyone to your point of view. That's just young. It's a young, immature, and also, beautiful and innocent in a lot of ways. And as mature, awakened women, men, we are not here to do that. We are here to hold space. We are here to witness. And, one of the antidotes for people being in this shadow is to invoke some play. When someone starts going off, and you could be like, or not, or redirect the conversation, because Gene Key 17 is not about not having opinions. It's just about holding them more lightly and more playfully and being in a broader, different conversation. So let's jump into that broader, different conversation, because 17 is a lot like 63 in that the shadow frequency represents something that by the time you get to the gift in the Siddhi, you've turned it on its head. So 63 is about logic. And by the time you've gotten to the Siddhi, you've had to leave logic behind. Similarly, by the time you get to omniscience, which is the eye of God, the 360 eye of God, like the animal totem is the falcon. The falcon is able to see the most minute detail on the ground being way up in the sky. Like the falcon is a marvel of nature. And so that's the close representative of the mind of God on 3D in this dimensional reality, and the animal totem of 17. So to get to that place, we drop opinions, judgments. We drop the shadow because we see through the matrix. We already see through it. There's no need to hold on to it. It was just a safety blanket when your worldview was lower and you were scared and you had to make up some stuff. And it comes from wounding. It comes from the ways that you were raised. And by the time you were a teenager, you could see it playing out. And so leaving behind the shadow matrix, we start to stop the war that's inside of us. Because here's the thing, we're dual people. We have two eyes, we have two ears, we have two sides of the brain, two arms, two legs. And the shadow gets us to pick a side. And so anytime we've picked a side, we've disenfranchised the other side. So if we pick logic, we've disenfranchised intuition. And there are some gene keys that just go with intuition and they've disenfranchised logic. And the force of the Siddhis, like the power of the Siddhis, is the unity of logic and intuition. And that's how we transcend the shadow and we step into the gift of farsightedness. And when we do that, we've ended our inner war because there's no need for duality. In my studies of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, my teacher said that the only problem with science is that it was created by scientists. I love that so much. Because science, rational scientific materialism, has basically disenfranchised intuition. It has disenfranchised the shamanistic, the magical. And so there's a resurgence happening right now in the magical, in the shamanic, in the unseen, in the luminous void, in the luminous emptiness, there is so much magic, and we know it. As awakened people, we're waking up to that. So I'm going to read to you what my teacher said. I just love this. So in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it's a perfect example of the transmission of 17 going to farsighted, going to omniscience. Because you can't know, there's three eyes. St. Bonaventure says that there are three eyes. I'm looking at my notes. The eye of reason, the eye of the flesh, right? What we can see in 3D. So the reason is the mind, what we can see in 3D. And then there's a third eye. Isn't that interesting? The third eye is the eye of contemplation. And that's how you enter the field of, let's call the death science. To understand death, which is to understand life, which is to understand consciousness, because consciousness continues. It's mind stream that continues. So in order to understand what happens when our flesh drops away, when our breathing, our prana stops, we have to enter through the world of contemplation. And that's how the Tibetan Book of the Dead was written. It was yogis practicing and having an experience, and that contemplation created for them a map, a roadmap that is part of like the treasure teachings. It was hidden until it was not. It was hidden until the people's consciousness came to a certain level, and then it was revealed. And it's a very dense text, and there are lots of people who have written about it, but it was written in a code. So if you have ears to hear, eyes to see, then you'll be able to decode the code. And you cannot enter the Tibetan Book of the Dead. You cannot enter death. You cannot enter consciousness through logic. And that's where 17 has to let go of its very structure. People who have this gene key, you're given toward patterns. You can see things. You're actually prescient. You can see the future because you can read patterns. And so what a shame to lock it into the matrix. Let's expand it and open it with the eye of contemplation so that you can see new things. I mean, this is a genius gene key. It's a gene key that science fiction is based on. How did people know? You know, if you watch some of the science fiction, you're like, holy shit, that's happening now. How do people know? Because gene key 17, they could decode the patterns. They got outside of their logic, linear mind. And so that's what my teacher says about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It replaces, okay, listen to this, a Western wake-centric, like like this is the best part of living is to be awake. I mean, right now, linear, monophasic, so only awakeness as the phase, awakeness, as the model. And it's a binary on off. So either you're asleep or you're awake. And I don't mean spiritually awake, I just mean physically awake. So it replaces, the Tibetan Book of the Dead doesn't come from that place. You can't enter the teachings through that door. You have to drop it. And so what it does is more of an Eastern view. It's like, he says it's like a dimmer. It's nonlinear. It's multiphasic, polyphasic. So instead of on off, we go from this gross body, to the subtle body, to the very subtle body and back. And that's really listening with the causal body, listening with something bigger than your gross body. And that's the province of this gene key 17. And so through that, you can mimic the experiences of death through meditation, through yoga. There's tantric practices. And also we know that there are entheogens, psychedelic medicines that open up your third eye point and allow you to see beyond the matrix. And in fact, if you've ever done a journey, you often, when you enter the journey, you see the grid, and the grid is the matrix. And then you either play in the fractals. Oftentimes I've played in so much geometry, it's crazy. Because the earth, the world, the cosmos is math. It's ordered. It's beyond our computation, but it's ordered. It's a fractal universe. And so when you open up your third eye, you can play in the fractals, and then that delivers you to an entirely new way of seeing the world. And so why is this even important? I don't know if you're asking that, but for whoever might be asking that, and that is that there are multiple levels of reality happening. And so when Pluto goes into Aquarius and then it opposes the nodes, meaning it poses the future that we're stepping into to create a cataclysmic upheaval, you better be related to another level of reality, or people will suffer because they'll see on this dense, gross plane just stuff happening. And humanity has certainly been through stuff happening. We've been through wars. We've been through famine. We've been through depression. We've been through genocides. We've been through horrible things that we might be on the precipice of again. We don't know. But we also know we have a say. We also know that our consciousness counts. And that's something that in that evolutionary ring of the spiral, that's something that wasn't most likely in play on a large scale. There may have been people who were awake, but now we have mass numbers of people awake. It's in the water. The teachings of the East have come to the West and liberated our minds through Tibetan Buddhism, through yoga and Hinduism, through non-dual teachings. The mind of the West is being infiltrated if it so chooses to let go and surrender. And when we surrender, we step into far-sightedness. So far-sightedness is the pathway to omniscience. It's the gift. It's the don't know mind. It's not playing dead in your opinions. It's showing up because you have the brain and the intelligence and the intellect to show up. And it's also deeply curious. What am I not seeing? I mean, isn't that way more interesting than defending your position? To me, defending a position, when I look into it, is actually quite boring. It's quite limiting. It's just saying that this is what the universe is, and already it's not. So already it's not true. And we live in duality, so the equal and the opposite is always at play. So it's like losing at the shadow level. And the only thing you gain is some level of certainty, which Pluto opposing the nodes is going to blow that up anyway. So then people are going to double down on their opinions, or they're going to wake up. And that's what I'm betting on. I'm betting on lots of people and waking up in this kind of quantum leap that's totally available. And so if you're listening to this, what you can do is start with yourself. Clear out the shadow. Clear out the places where you're stuck, where it has to be that way, where you're shoulding life. And we're going to work with that inside of the next soul activation sisterhood session that follows this. We're going to work with the ways that we should life. And we're going to open our pineal gland. Because when we should life, we're in denial. And we're only in denial because we're scared and we want certainty. And when we let go and we realize who and what we really are, that we've been mistaken. We are not just this dense, physical, gross body. We have so many bodies. We have so much access to the infinite, to the world of the unseen. I call it the world of superabundance. Well, Richard Rudd calls it that in Gene Key 53. It's the world of superabundance. It's the world of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It's the mystical teachings that lie beyond this plane. And humanity is hungry for them, because when we opted in the Western world to build the modern world simply from the left brain, we cut off the sacred. And so now humanity is supposed to make meaning and find purpose, and there's no sacred. That's impossible. So then we just become walking heads, and life is lived in the mind. Life is not lived in the body. So let's, collectively create a powerful context that whatever happens, it doesn't even matter, whatever happens, that who and what we are is rooted, is connected, is grounded in these teachings, that we are more than what we appear, and that we can trust life. Life is just doing life. And when we lean into life, we stop the denial of resisting life. So find the places that you're resisting life and come to peace with it. Go inside, find the nugget of what it is you're resisting. Why are you afraid? And shine the light. Simply shine the light on it. And when you do that, you'll start to have the mind of God. You'll start to see the matrix. Maybe the matrix handed to you from your childhood. Goddess knows we're doing a lot of that work right now, and it's perfect work. It's preparing us to be these warriors of light, to be the change, so that when these cataclysmic events, no matter what they are, I have no idea what they are, we will be ready. We will be a beacon of light for others. So I think that's it. I'm going to look at my notes and see if there's anything else. There's so much to say, but I think I got it down. Yeah, I think I got it down. Yeah, there's one more line that I really loved that I will end with. So Richard Rudd had said that when you get to the Siddhi level, that it's not you seeing the world, it's God seeing the world through you. It's the cosmos looking at itself through you. That, to me, is the nectar that, the ego self has no concept of. There's no identity in it. And there's such an incredible relief in it, right? To have the experience of the mind of God looking at God is really the gold. It's the Siddhi. It's the superpower. So put that into your third eye. Put that into your projector field. Manifest that, and you manifest freedom. Yeah, it's sublime. I love that. Katayun, thank you so much. Oh, living in the sacred, Claudia, the perspective of an eagle through the heart of a dove. That's exactly right. I love CJ. She studies this too. So she brings in whatever I don't say. Yeah, raising the retirement age through executive action, forcing people to work longer and harder. Yeah, exactly. It's an exhausting populace. So we can kind of see the writing on the wall. I think that what you're pointing to, CJ, is that if, Gene Key 17 is just going to look at the pattern. And if you have Gene Key 17, go look at the French Revolution. Go look at the founding of the United States. Go look at what the pattern was happening. What were the cries of the people? What was the problem? Taxation without representation. The elites creating rules that everybody had to live by. Like all men are created equal, but we had slaves. It was like such dissonance, right? And women were disenfranchised. So you can see where the pattern of what gets to be undone on our watch as midwives of this incredible change. I mean, think about it. What if what we're doing and who we're being and how we allow the frequencies to come through us sets the tone for a golden age, for the time when there are enlightened institutions and not corrupt institutions. So corruption is going to come forward. We're going to see the shadow underbelly as we have already, but we're going to see more of it in order to take a stand for something new. So thank you. I'm so excited with who we get to be. And I'm also present to, like, it can be scary, especially when you're by yourself or when you're thinking in your own mind and you're listening to the news. Like, shut down the news. That is not a place to create your context from. Yes, learn about what's happening, but people's interpretations, no, let them go. Come into your own sacred space. Come with your own people in sacred community to really restore that other part of our brain, that other part that we have collectively disenfranchised ourselves from, and bring that into the conversation and weave together solutions. So thank you all. It's been so beautiful to be here with you in this momentous occasion. And I'll see you in the network, the Evolving Sisters Network, next week. Sending you lots of love, lots of beauty, and really keep the faith. We are here for a reason. May all beings benefit from the merits of our efforts. Namaste.